People scare me because even with the nicest of people, they can sometimes be why you have to be weary.
Thank you for clicking on this video. I'm Brooke Makenna, but today we are going to be talking about a woman named Jane Toppan. Now this woman had many different names, but the most disturbing one of all was Jolly Jane. And when you think of serial killers, most people think of males. But there are female serial killers out there, and this is one of them. By the way, I am doing Suspect Summer. If you didn't know I say it a lot, but please make sure you're subscribed and you're liking these videos if you do enjoy them, because it does encourage me. I do love doing these videos, but it makes me happy when I know that you guys are loving them too. So I am posting so much content for Suspect Summer this summer, and if you do want me to continue, please let me know. Now let's get back to the story. So it was 1885 and Jane Toppan was 31 years old. She was actually training to be a nurse at Cambridge Hospital in Massachusetts, Boston specifically. And she was basically one of the favorites. Everyone at the hospital really loved her. She was pleasant, she was upbeat, she was so good with the patients. And so that's when she kind of got her nickname Jolly Jane from the other staff members. But Jane's favorite patients were the elderly, and the staff couldn't figure out why. The real reason was that Jane was using them as her personal guinea pigs for experiments that she wanted to run. She would give them an incredible amount of painkillers like morphine just to see how far they could take it. So she would find the weakest patient she could so they couldn't fight back, and she would give them loads of any painkiller she could get her hand on. She would also fake the charts so she wouldn't get caught doing it. For most of the patients, the painkillers would make them drift in and out of consciousness, so they couldn't ask for help. They couldn't tell someone what Jane was doing. They were basically helpless because they were already sick, and then these painkillers were making them kind of fuzzy. And so Jane was really getting away with this. She would even get on top of them during their dying moments and just caress them. But the hospital and the staff may have had an inkling, but they never really figured it out. They thought that she was still so amazing that 4 years later, after she had been working there this entire time doing that, in 1889, she was transferred to another hospital that was like a higher up. It was like a promotion for her, basically. It was at the Massachusetts General Hospital, and she was given a job there. It was about 20 minutes away from her previous hospital, and this was after she had also been caught stealing little petty items. She had committed petty theft and had been caught doing this at the hospital, and they still, just because she was so kind, I guess, she was Jolly Jane, they sent her to another hospital to work. She continued to do these same things with the patients at this new hospital and was still not getting caught. Whether it was because the patients were elderly and were going to die, or that they couldn't get any help by the time that she was done with them, I don't know, but she was getting away with it, and she was using the same MO every time. But then it seemed like Jane was getting cocky. She was then being very careless with her medications that she was giving out. She wasn't necessarily doing it like she had before with like drugging them and poisoning them to death. It was more like if somebody would ask her for some pills, she would just hand them to them, no problem, like tons of them. And that's when she was finally caught. And she was actually fired after a year of working there, not for killing those people, but for improper distribution of drugs. She actually transferred back to Cambridge Hospital, her first hospital, and was then shortly after dismissed again for distributing meds recklessly. That is when private doctors actually started her private nursing career. They would give her names of wealthy patients to go and help at their homes. Now this is said to be possibly because wealthy people were wanting a nurse that was reckless with medication and just to give them anything that they asked for, and so Jane was kind of perfect for this. But I don't think that they were quite aware of how far she was willing to go with those medications. Now, she loved this job because now she had freedom. She was away from the watchful eyes of the staff. She was really in charge of herself. But this almost gave her a false realization that she could do whatever she wanted. And she did, because she figured she didn't even have to clean things up right away. She didn't have to cover her tracks. In May of 1895, she actually killed her landlord, Israel Dunham. He was her ideal victim at 83 years old, and she just straight up poisoned him. She'd been taking care of him for a while before then, and it was said that she was sick of him being so elderly and annoying and complaining too much. A few months later, in September, his wife, Lovely Dunham, died at age 87 under the care of Jane Toppan. 2 years later, in 1899, a woman named Elizabeth Brigham actually died of an overdose. And this woman was Jane's foster sister. Then she killed her next patient, named Mary McNear, at 70 years old that December. Jane was now 45 and still had a very obvious hatred for the elderly. Her next victim was her housekeeper, Florence Calkins, who was 45 years old and died in January of 1900. It is unknown why she did this, but possibly Florence was onto her and was going to turn her in. But in the same month, she killed another one of her patients, William Ingraham, at 70 years old. And then she went on to kill another younger person at 48 years old, who was actually a patient and a friend of hers. Her name is Sarah Myra Connors, and it was said that she was murdered because Jane wanted her spot in theological school, so she murdered her for it. And that was in February. Then she killed another patient named Maddie Davis at 62, and once she died, the family asked Jane to move in with the rest of the family, her husband and their 2 kids, to help them. Her whole family was heaven to Jane, and within weeks they were all dead as well. Alan, the husband, and Minnie and Edna, the 2 daughters, the whole family was mysteriously dead. Jane then went back home and acted as if nothing had happened. She then wanted a date with her foster sister that she had killed previously's husband, who was now widowed because of her. She wanted him to be her lover. And so she decided to poison and kill this man's sister and poison him as well. Her thought was that if she could poison him and then nurse him back to health, he would somehow fall in love with her. Instead, he got better and kicked her out of the house. But just when Jane thought she was getting too good to get caught, the Davis family was ordering toxicology reports on Minnie's body, one of the daughters. Because remember, they were a wealthy family, and in that time, not many could order those, but they could. This was the beginning of the end for Jane Toppan. The reports came back conclusive that Minnie was poisoned, and the Davis family knew exactly who to point their finger at. This is when the search for Jane ensued, for the nurse, jolly nurse, that was a serial killer. On October 29th of 1901, Jane Toppan was arrested for their murders. That's when all of her secrets began flooding out, because Jane Toppan was not even her real name. She was born to 2 Irish immigrants named Bridget and Peter Kelly. Her real name was Honora Kelly, and her mother had died when she was younger of tuberculosis. Her father, Peter, was an alcoholic, he was a druggie, and he was very abusive towards her. He also had the nickname Kelly the Crack, as in crackpot. In 1863, only a few years after their mother had died, their father took them. Honora was 6, and her older sister, Delia, was 8. They were his 2 youngest children. They took both the girls to a Boston female asylum. They took them there because they housed females that were in need, and he left them never to see them again. He supposedly did this because he went down his own mental spiral after their mother died, and the notes at the facility actually said that they were rescued from a very miserable home. But what had happened after they were inside the asylum is unknown, because the records don't exist. It is thought that Delia, the 8-year-old that was sent there with Honora, was forced to become a sex worker, and their older sister Nellie, who was initially not sent to the asylum, was sent there eventually. In November of 1864, 2 years after they were dropped off, we do know that Honora Kelly was dropped off with a family with the last name of Toppan. She was basically placed there to be an indentured servant, which was basically a way for her to make money there for a fixed number of years, but to her, this was a family, which was something she never really knew of. Miss Ancie Toppan and the Toppan family lived in Lowell, Massachusetts, and they were very wealthy, and they were just the family that Honora wanted. They had a daughter named Elizabeth, which I talked about before. And they never adopted Honora because she was supposed to be there to work. But Honora decided she wanted to make herself part of the family, and she gave herself the last name of Toppan. She also changed her first name to Jane. Despite Jane's jealousy over Elizabeth and her place in the Toppan household, they kept in contact as they grew into adulthood. And while Jane was going through her killing spree, Elizabeth unfortunately invited her over to the house they grew up in to spend some time together. Jane brought over a picnic for the two of them with her favorite poisons inside, and Elizabeth unfortunately died there, eating the food and the drinks that Jane had brought. And in Jane's own words about killing her sister, she said, "I held her in my arms and watched with delight as she gasped her life out." She apparently wanted her sister Elizabeth's husband, but she never got him, which, understandably. After it didn't work out with Elizabeth's husband wanting Jane, Jane apparently tried to poison herself and was hospitalized, and when she finally got out, that is when she heard that the police were looking for her. Once the word spread that Jane Toppan was a murderer, more and more patients from the hospital she worked at came forward saying that they had vague memories of her drugging them and of her climbing on top of them while they were in this haze. When Jane was caught, she admitted to fondling them and said that she wanted to see the inner workings of their soul through their eyes. It was also brought forward that Jane got sexual pleasure from watching basically the life drain out of them. She is basically considered an angel of death type of serial killer, which likes to become a caregiver for the dependent and then prey on them. Jane Toppan admitted to 31 murders, but said that there could be as many as 100. She said that all of this was because of a failed relationship when she was a teenager that she had been tortured by since she was 16. Jane went on the stand insisting her sanity by saying she could not be insane if she knew what she was doing and why she was doing it. But it was also said that she had told her lawyer before that she wanted the jury to find her insane so she could possibly be let out later. In June 23rd of 1902, it took the jury 27 minutes to find her not guilty by reasons of insanity. She was sentenced to life in Taunton Insane Hospital, where she just continued to prove her insanity. She would actually call out to the nurses saying, "Get some morphine, dearie, and we'll go out in the ward. You and I will have a lot of fun seeing them die." She didn't give up after years. She continued to ask the caregivers to kill with her and basically become the new Jolly Jane. But thankfully, none of them did. She hung on to life forever, it seemed like to the nurses, and I'm sure it was just in spite of them as well. And finally, in 1938, at 84 years old, she passed away. She was quoted to have said her ambition was to kill more people, helpless people, than any man or woman that had ever lived. So that was the terrifying, twisted, creepy story of Jane Toppan, who was really Honora Kelly. But what I want to know from you guys is if you think that this relationship she talked about that she had at 16 was really the reason for all of this, because the obvious answer would obviously be her past trauma as a child with her family being sent to this place. Although she never spoke of that, do you think it was just kind of something she didn't want to talk about, or a repressed memory, and so it was easier for her to say a relationship did it? Or was she even too insane to know why she was insane? I'd love to know your theories on that down below, because like I said before, why these people do it, why these serial killers do it, boggles my mind. I just want to, I want to get in their brain and find out why, but then again, I don't. I want to stay far, far away from them. But yeah, I just feel like the obvious answer would be lack of love as a child, abuse, and then being sent away, and then being put in this home that wasn't really a home for her, but she kind of got a glimpse of that family that she wasn't in. There are many aspects as to why she could have become a serial killer. Not that I'm saying it was okay that she did, just that you can see a pattern in her life as to how she did, I guess, which is so scary. And how do you guys think she got away with it? Was it all about her being kind? I know that there's a certain manipulative type of person. I've personally been around manipulative people like her that just have such a sweet personality that you would never know if you weren't their victim, and then it's too late. Those kind of people, I think, are the scariest kind of killers, because you don't see it coming. There's no warning signs whatsoever unless you're really looking for them. But yeah, let me know if you want more serial killer videos, because of course they are probably one of the most interesting ones to me, but they're also really creepy. So I hope you didn't watch this at night, and if you did, I hope you watch a Disney Channel movie after this or something. And also, Jane's father never saw Jane again, but he was said to have sewed his own eyes together, his eyelids, when he was a tailor, just because he completely went insane. So you could say that Jane's craziness also could have been inherited. Sorry, the battery died, but what I was saying is, could her insanity have possibly been inherited? I know that there's that new Hereditary movie that's out it's out right now, that talks about what you can inherit from your family and the dark things that can come with your genetics that you can't help. And so that raises the question as well. Can people help that when they're born into themselves from the people that they were born into? I don't know. Crazy stuff. But as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this below. Please thumbs up if you do like these videos. I try my best to do the best research that I can for you guys, and I love your support. So yeah, I think that is it. I will let you guys go. Bye.
And those who do acts of hate merely for enjoyment means they'll strike at random moments.